All right, I want to welcome everybody to our next podcast session. We are thrilled to bring on a really cool, what I would call a prospecting genius, but really you're just gritty and working really hard. Kent Brown, you're right here in Utah, just south of Salt Lake City. Tell everybody about your story, how long you've been in real estate, a little bit of what you're up to.
Yeah, so I was doing a lot of ISA work for a tech company. And, you know, I had a buddy that was a real estate agent and was like, man, you should come prospect for me. I'll pay you, get your real estate license. I'll pay you a referral fee. Because I really had no intention on ever becoming a real estate agent.
For sure. For sure.
And, as I got into it, I got introduced to Mike Ferry, and I was like, I could really do this myself. So he wasn't as much Mike Ferry, and that's what got me into it 7 years ago in August.
7 years ago. So 7 years ago, you became a real estate agent. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I got my license 7
and
years
you were
ago.
working as an ISA before that. And so basically got groomed into sales as an ISA rep. How long were you an ISA, Ken?
5 years.
I was just at an event talking to a guy. He was actually on stage. He started his career similarly. He was an ISA. He made a lot of dials and a lot of contacts, and has just become kind of a genius in communicating with people, right? So you and our cross paths a couple weeks ago. I saw you were on this new mission of basically making 100,000 dials in 100 days. Is that the mission you're currently on? Is that right?
That's it. Yeah, we're on day 13. So 12,000 dials in.
I love it. All right. So you're making a lot of dials. You're talking to a lot of people. You're getting rejected a lot. That's one of the reasons I wanted to bring you in, is talking a little bit about mindset and how to deal with, a lot of no answers, a lot of rejection on the phone, and how you're warming up some of these conversations. So today, we want to talk a little bit about who are you talking to, who are you calling, who are you reaching out to? And I know you're doing a lot of stuff in your career. You might door knock, you might mail some stuff, but right now it's all about making contacts. And one thing that we're really clear about at Landvoice is, listen, honor the DNC registry, call people, but make sure they're not on the DNC. You've been doing that. You've been looking at phone numbers that are on the DNC and that aren't. I get all of that. So let's just talk through some sources as we talked about honoring the DNC and looking through that. What are some of the sources you're reaching out to with people? You and I just talked earlier a little bit about expireds. That's one source that we want to turn to. Obviously, people that didn't sell their home but had their hand in the air, they're trying to sell their home and didn't, is a good source to turn to. What else are you reaching out to when you're trying to kind of develop a relationship with a homeowner?
So expireds, canceled, a lot of circle prospecting. Prospecting, you never really run out of numbers.
Yep.
For rent by owners, and then that's mainly it at this point.
Okay.
And some for sale by owners. As they come in, I'm calling them. Used to be big on for sale by owners, not so much anymore. They take a lot of follow-up. They're pretty analytical. And I'm looking for low-hanging fruit. I had a coach one time say, she listened to my calls and said, Kate, you're climbing to the top of the tree and picking unripe fruit. And those are hard people to follow up with, hard to digest. Look for low-hanging fruit. You're having a problem following up.
Yeah, so circle prospecting is kind of more your jam. Expireds, the other thing you and I talk a little bit about is even old expireds. People that their home expired a year ago or 2 years ago, you're seeing some success there as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, doing a lot of just sold script with the older expireds, which we kind of tactically went into before we got on and got live.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that. So obviously there's a little bit of science to expireds. Expired conversations are a little bit different than when we're calling an old expired. And then the circle prospecting, which can be similar to what you and I talked about, maybe with like an old expired, for example. So let's just jump into that. I mean, you're making 1,000 calls a day, again, trying to honor the DNC and making sure we're looking at those details and that data. When we call and reach out to an expired, like what's generating success? How are you kind of not only keeping people on the phone, but really developing that relationship? What are some things you say to an expired that I think are important to other agents trying to do something similar?
Yeah, so there's something called, have you ever heard of something called binary questions, Sean?
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to do that.
So I do a lot of that. So it's more, instead of like, hey, I saw your house came up expired, because 90% of people don't know what expired means. So you say, hey,
Yeah.
Sean, I saw your house was on the market. The
Yep.
truth. So in NLP, there's pacing and leading. So truth, and then an ask that gets you closer to close. So, hey, Sean, saw your house was on the market. Truth. It left unsold. Truth. Did it end up selling privately, or is it still available? And I give them an either or, a binary question.
So good. Two truths. What I like about it though is you didn't say it expired. What was your wording again? Tell everybody what you say there. It didn't
I
sell.
saw your home was on the market and it looks like it didn't sell.
Okay.
Did it end up selling privately, or is it still available?
So good. So good. Okay. So we're leading with the truths. We're going to go in this binary route. Other things that you say after that?
So typically you're going to get a brush off. Oh, no. We're no longer selling it.
Mm-hmm.
And I go back to another binary question. Okay. You're no longer selling. I get that. So massive approval, repeat massive approval. I can't say that I blame you. It's a beautiful home. Are you not selling because you need more time in the home, or just simply feel like the market's not willing to give you what you need to make a move?
Two really good questions. The other thing that I want to remind everybody on is when you said, I get that, like the one thing we try and we kind of lose and being in the real estate industry or any industry is sometimes we forget to validate. And so when you're saying just the little keywords of validation, oh, totally get that. Like we're kind of moving ourselves into rapport and getting on
Mm-hmm.
that same page with that individual. So I want people to not miss that one thing that you just said. I get that. There's little terms like that that move us into rapport, get us on their same side of the fence, and then help us ask those next most important questions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So, I mean, really, you just got to deal with the brush offs. Once you get that, they typically answer and say, well, no. 90% of them, I would say, is, man, yeah, nothing's selling. Because if they had a good agent, the agent was blaming the market.
Right.
If they had a
Right.
bad agent, the agent wasn't talking to them. And so they're coming to their own conclusions. And their own conclusions is the news. And the news is saying nothing's selling, the sky is falling,
Yep.
tariffs are killing us, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right.
Sure.
So, Sean, I hear that a lot. Nothing's selling. And have you ever heard the term words talk, numbers scream? This is where you want to insert numbers. So would it surprise you to know that 2,500 homes sold here in Utah and Salt Lake County just in the last 30 days? I feel like yours should have been one of them.
So good.
So
So
again,
good.
a
We're throwing
truth.
truths and stats,
Yep.
throwing the numbers at them, right? So good. And that typically kind of opens them up a little bit more, right? Like, oh, interesting. Or what are you hearing from that?
Yeah. At that point, they're like, yeah, okay. Very interesting. I didn't know that, or that is surprising. I do feel like mine should have sold. And I say, I agree. Listen, at the end of the day, it likely wasn't your home. It was the plan that was put in place to get your home sold, which is exactly why I'm calling you, because I specialize in getting homes sold that didn't sell the first time around. Would you be open to having a 15-minute conversation this afternoon, or would tomorrow be easier for you? And it's
So
just
good.
closing, asking for
And
the appointment.
there's a couple things that just happened in that discussion. One, you've already been turned down 2 or 3 times, but you're just kind of continue to lead with questions to keep the conversation moving. Asking the right questions to get them kind of more interested in, yeah, is this a numbers problem? Or is it a marketing problem with my home? Or is it the home? And you're already validating, saying, I know it's not your home. You have a beautiful home. Let's talk a little bit more about the numbers, right? Kind of leading them in a different
Yeah.
direction, right?
Yeah, exactly. A lot of what I say is it's kind of a takeaway close. Listen, John, I'm super clear. If I come over and nothing I say makes sense, and you're not comfortable and confident that I can get your home sold, you don't have to hire me, do you?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you're in charge, but even if you don't hire me, you're gonna at least walk away knowing exactly why your home didn't sell. And isn't that worth 15 minutes of your time?
So if they're still hesitant, they still have kind of some reservations, you're kind of just softly landing and helping them understand, listen, even if it's not a fit, I'm going to give you a little bit more information to know what the next steps are for you, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
good. It's clean, Kent. I really like it. So
And
we
then
just kind of went,
cancels,
go ahead.
cancels
Yeah.
are a little bit different. So there's expireds, and it's just the opening line that changes.
Yep.
So, hey, Sean, saw that your home was on the market. It looks like you canceled either the listing or the contract with your last agent. Did your plans change, or are you looking for a more aggressive agent to help you sell it?
Interesting. That's so good. Okay. And responses from that, what do you hear most of the time when you're saying that?
Oh no, plans just changed. We're no longer selling. And then same thing, same cycle. Oh, okay, I get it. It's a beautiful home. I can't say that I blame you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you just need more time in the home, or you just feel like it's not the right market to get it sold?
And that's the key, because a lot of people that canceled, it just really comes down to timing, right? They need another
Yeah.
30, 60, 90 days. We get that on our calendar or put it in our CRM. So if somebody told you, Kent, yeah, we're just going to hold off for about 6 months, what would you do with something like that?
Hey, I get that, Sean. Let me ask you this. If you knew, and I know this is a bold statement, but if you knew that by waiting it could potentially cost you tens of thousands of dollars, would you have to wait, or could you move up that timeline?
So good. So good. Yeah, I love that.
Here's an interesting stat. So for everybody out there, so I took the original list price, what the home actually sold for, subtracted concessions, and divided days on market.
Mm-hmm.
And it spits out a number. And that number is, how much am I losing each day that my home is on the market? And that number is $440 per day here in Utah County.
Okay.
And so if you think about it, I'm going to sell in the fall because I don't want to sell in the spring. Well, what does days on market do in the fall typically? It goes
It's
up.
longer. Yeah.
So if you're sitting there for an extra 45 days, 50 days, that's costing you 20 grand.
And if you're having to rent instead of buy because you're still sitting on the property, right? Like that number
Exactly.
exponentially grows pretty fast,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Yeah. I love that.
But you always
Okay.
handle objections with questions.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I like to remind people is, let's say it's just a hard 6 months, Kent. Like, no, I just need 6 months. I've got this other job or whatever. What I like to tell a lot of real estate professionals out there is, okay, it's a hard 6 months. We don't call them 6 months later. We're still following up 2 and 3 months later at the latest, because again, those timelines change. We want to remain in contact with them, right?
Yeah, you want to do an 8x8 at that point. So a millionaire real estate agent, they have the 8x8 33-point touch. 8x8 is fantastic for adopting clients. So if over the next 8 weeks you can give them something 8 times that's of value, you'll adopt that person. And when they sell in 6 months, they're likely going to go with you.
So it sounds like you're using a CRM that has that automated for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah. CRM, sending out text messages. So I mean, put it in Chat GPT and say, I need to create a 8x8 touch plan for
30
expireds.
seconds later, you got it. Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that. So good. Okay, so we gave you some good tips on expireds, on canceled. Let's talk about this circle prospecting for a minute. Typically, when we're circle prospecting, you're going to pick a neighborhood or an area. And a lot of what we want to talk to neighbors and friends and family, but specifically in a certain prospecting area, is it's typically a just listed or a just sold type of conversation we're having with these neighbors, right?
Yeah. So just listed, just sold, or hot buyer, typically what I go after.
Okay. So tell the people a little bit about that. You call me up, you're circle prospecting my neighborhood, and you call me. What's something you're going to tell me as a homeowner?
So every good piece of marketing, Sean, your marketing has a good hook, right? So,
Yep.
hey, Sean, it's Kent. I'm calling with a bit of neighborhood news or some exciting neighborhood news. We just listed the Fars home over on 123 Main Street, 4-bed, 2-bath. It's the blue one. I'm not sure if you know the Fars or not, but it's listed at 450,000. And I was calling to see, who do you know that's looking to move into the neighborhood? It's always a
Sound good.
third party ask first. And
Yep.
then when they say nobody, say, hey, I appreciate you at least thinking about it. I know this call was completely out of the blue. Can I send over the information just in case you run into anybody? So with just listed, a lot of times, I'm not doing a lot of pushing because I call them when it lists, when it goes under contract, and when it sells.
Okay.
I'm going to have two other opportunities to reach out to them. So that's my just listed call. And then I text them over. And the reason why is because neighbors talk. And so those neighbors are going to then go talk to my sellers and be like, hey, I talked to your agent, super cool guy, wasn't pushy at all. Right? You want them
Yeah.
to have a good taste
And all the
in
neighbors
their
want to know
mouth.
the price of the home anyway, right? So instead of them
Yeah,
having to get on Zillow, you should have that conversation anyway, right?
100%. Then when it
Yeah.
goes under contract, hey, Sean, it's Kent again, your local real estate or the FAR's real estate agent or the local real estate agent in the area. We just went under contract on the FAR's home, and then go over the highlights of we had 30 showings, 2 offers. So that means there's still a buyer looking in the neighborhood. Have you guys considered selling it if you could get a strong offer?
There's so many things I love about that. One is building relationships with these neighbors as homes are being listed and going under contract and selling. Two is we're entering into more of permission marketing. We're asking for opportunities to send them information on that home or in your CRM. And most CRMs that are out there, we could do something, which is one of my favorite things as a real estate agent, is to send them a market report on their own home, on what it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
So in most CRMs, it has it. If it doesn't, look for some other CRMs. But find that opportunity that you can now put on autopilot, an opportunity to touch this homeowner and share with them what the value of their home is every month. You now maintain contact with many of these homeowners in these neighborhoods, right?
Yeah. So the best way to get emails to stay in contact, you can tell them that you're going to send them out a market report, but I just say, hey, Sean, do you mind if we just stay in touch from time to time? Keep you up to date on the market? Because time to time is very vague. They don't think they're going to get bombarded. At least that's what they're hearing.
Yep.
And so they go, yeah, that would be fine. Great. What's the best email for you?
Yeah.
And if they say, at that point, they've given you permission, 9 times out of 10, they're just going to give you their email because they've already gone that far.
Yeah. Now, one thing you and I were talking about earlier is that these are really good opportunities to, again, develop relationships with expireds, canceleds, our circle prospecting and talking to neighbors and developing relationships there. Old expireds is not something a lot of people do, not a lot of real estate professionals do, but you had an interesting take on what kind of conversations you're having on an expired that happened a year ago, a year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years ago. What are you doing with those types of homeowners that might be a little bit different from what another agent might do?
Yeah. So we do just sold calls. If you really think about it, expireds don't want to, they want results. They don't want to list their home. I never talk about, hey, then we can talk about listing your home. Like they just get PTSD from that.
Mm-hmm.
So usually I'll say, hey, Sean, it's Kent. We've seen 35 homes sell here in Springville over the last 30 days. We're seeing a really strong seller's market. Buyers are out looking at houses. Have you guys ever considered, I know this is probably a long shot, but have you guys ever thought about selling your house?
Couple takeaways there. One, we're not talking about their home being on the market a year ago or 2 years ago. We're just exploring opportunities to see if they're interested in listing their own home, right? If they've ever thought about selling.
Yeah.
Okay.
And usually they'll say, yeah, I mean, we tried to sell it a couple of years ago. Oh, you're kidding.
I'll volunteer that.
Didn't end up selling. What happened?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Really simple question.
What happened, right? Yeah. Life event change. Did it just not sell? What happened? I love that. Okay.
Yep.
No, these are really good things. Now, you've got this aggressive goal. I'm going to kind of come full circle now. You're trying to reach out to 100,000 people in 100 days. So you're trying to make contact with 1,000 people a day. Is that really what the goal is right now?
Well, just calling 1,000 numbers per day. I'm probably making contact with on average 70 people right now.
Okay. So about
So
7% is the contact rate right now in this
mhm.
big goal of yours. So making quite a few calls. We're reaching out and touching base with about 7%. Tell the group a little bit about that. Like, I know you're doing a lot of calling in the morning, but it sounds like you're calling in the afternoons too. Talk through time. I mean, this is a pretty aggressive goal, right? I mean, it's a little bit
Yeah.
inhuman, to be honest. This isn't something that happens very often. That's why I wanted to reach out to you and talk.
Yeah.
But are you doing it like in the morning, the afternoon, the evenings? So tell the people a little bit about that, what that looks like for you.
Yeah, I think the latest I've stayed in office is 7:30 so far. So just till I get 1,000 calls in. Um, but yeah, it's so I start at 8:30 in the morning. We'll call through the new expireds. And then from there, I'm going into a lot of for rent by owners, circle prospecting, circle back into the new expireds, old expireds. When I get later in the day, Sean, if I'm being entirely honest, I'm like, I'm just going to let up expireds and call through
Just
all of
go.
them because you have
Yeah.
low answer rate. And I know that's really, it's low answer rate, but higher conversion. So
Yeah.
your conversations are more valuable.
In the evening is what you're saying?
Well, just overall, I've honestly found the best time to call people is 5 o'clock in the afternoon,
Yeah.
5 to 6. People are sitting in traffic.
It's a sweet spot, huh?
They're bored. They have nothing better to do.
Yeah. So your pickup rates are better from 5 to 6.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Best pickup rates. I won't say that. Best pickup rates are 8 to 10. Best conversations are happening 5 to 6.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. That's really good. I like that. Well, I love the goal. I think it's ambitious. I don't think it's something I've ever seen anyone do before. And I had to talk to Kent Brown just to see, number one, how it's going. We're 13 days in, right?
Yep. 13 days in, 13,000 calls. I've made, let's see. Oh, we're at 750 contacts. We're at 11 appointments set. You just have lower appointments when you're doing a lot of circle prospecting. It's part of it. You
Yep.
get a lot more no's.
Yep.
But I've made 40 leads. And I think one thing that's really important for your audience to understand, what I do today will affect me in 6 months.
No
Very
question.
little of what I do today will affect me today. So an interesting stat, Sean, is 3.5 million people in Utah, 10,000 homes for sale, which means I'm every 350 people I talk to are going to be like, yeah, we're thinking about selling. We're okay with having you come over.
Yeah.
And they're ready to go now.
Yeah.
But from those results, so far in the last 13 days, the total commissions with contract signed is $59,743 per hour and $72 per contact. That's what
I
I'm
love
making.
breaking it down. I love gamifying it and knowing
Yeah.
how much per dial, how much per contact, and how many conversations are we having and what that's worth to you and your business. And if you're in this for the long term, which you are, those numbers start changing week over week, month over month as well, right?
Yeah, it
There's a
starts compounding for sure.
Yeah. There's a pretty popular coach out here in Utah right now. And what he keeps telling his team is let's just keep stacking days. And what we've got to do in our business is just that it's little things that we got to keep stacking every day that grow our business into something really, really special. And, most of us have read The Compound Effect. It's a phenomenal book, but I just love the idea of getting really gritty, having conversations, getting our name out there, and growing your business in a very mature and important way that's going to help you and your family for a very, very long time. So kudos to you, Kent, in a
Yeah.
lot of different ways. Super excited to see your success. Would love to even talk to you after these 30 days. You're almost at that halfway point, which is really cool, right?
Yep.
Really cool. If
So
I could go ahead, Kent.
one thing I want to bring up
Yep.
is until you have to fall in love with the process before you can get the outcomes in real estate. Like it's just part of it. If you don't fall in love with the process of prospecting and talking to people every day, you're probably not going to last long in this business. And I'm not saying people fell without prospecting, but even if you're buying leads, you're prospecting. Even
Yep.
if you have a massive COI, you're prospecting to them. They're just warmer.
Yeah, I agree with that in so many ways. We'll want to throw out another disclaimer and a quick plug. If nobody's following Kent Brown on Instagram, go follow him because he's posting and telling you some of the things that are going right, going wrong. What's your Instagram handle, Ken?
Kenty B09, I want to say. My
Yeah.
wife is handling all of that.
Follow Kent on Instagram. Remember to honor the DNC. Remember, honor the do not call registry. If you don't know how to get an expired or a contact and how to scrub all those against the DNC, there's a lot of providers out there. Obviously, at Landvoice, we're pretty proud about what we do. We see a lot of providers trying to sell data to you for $200, $300, $400 a month. Guys, it's super inexpensive at Landvoice. It's $100 a month. You're going to get FSBOs, expireds, pre-foreclosures, and your neighborhood search tool, like a circle prospecting tool. So we're going to save you a lot of time and a lot of money. We're going to scrub every number against the DNC so you know what to call and what not to call. And we're going to help you just kind of stay within the regulations of what you should be doing as a real estate agent. So keep that in mind. We'd love to save you a lot of time and a lot of money. More importantly, we'd like to get you the really hard to find expired data that you can't find normally just on your MLS. So reach out to us. Let us know if we can help in any way. Kent, I've got a couple of offers for you that I'd like to throw your way after the call as well. Really appreciate your time today. Any final thoughts for us before, as we're wrapping up?
No, I mean, it's the more you, I know a big thing is how do I get over call reluctance? You just do it. It's like building calluses. I built fence also. I remember in high school, I built fence. In
Yep.
the first 2 weeks, my hands would bleed and were sore, and I didn't want to go to work. Same thing with your mind. You just have to bleed and push through it for 2 weeks. Then after you do that, I feel like it's really easy for me to get on the phone right now, especially where I'm in momentum. And I just don't care. I'm not looking for the no's. I'm looking for the yeses. And I know there's 100 no's in my way.
I'd say a couple of things about Kent. Number one, he was groomed. He became an ISA first early in his career. And
Yeah.
we all have to go through kind of the callousing, right? Through being an ISA, probably callous those hands just like those fence posts did, right? Number two, I think we got to gamify it, right? And what I mean by that is
Yeah.
you now know your numbers. You now know what it takes, how many conversations you have to have, and how much every conversation is worth to you and your business. And if you can see those numbers, to me, those are the two things that kind of get us going. Is one, we got to be gritty. We got to just kind of get past the nose. Number two is we got to learn how to communicate and ask the right questions like you've talked about today. And number three, we just got to know our numbers. We got to know.
Yeah.
And if you know every conversation is worth X amount of dollars, it's pretty easy to just start making those dials, start knocking doors, start sending mailers. But you know what your contact rate is, and that inspires us to kind of work harder every day and to start stacking those days like I was talking about before.
And if you're new, because there's a lot of people I've never prospected before, I don't know my numbers. Here's a one piece of advice I would give you. Go on, call with zero attachment to any outcome and see how many calls it takes for someone to tell you yes, and then beat it the next time.
So if you got 15 no's before you got a yes, now you start over and see, can I get less no's?
Yeah,
than
can I
that
get
last,
14
right?
no's and get a yes now?
Really good strategy that just helps us kind of get through some of that struggle, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Ken, wish you all the best and all the
Thanks,
success as
man.
you wrap
Thanks
up
for
the
having
next
me on.
17 days, man. Really appreciate you jumping on board with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Great chatting.
All right. We'll see you guys soon.